Well, it's been a season of highs and lows, but tonight is the way to get yourself set up and prepared for a championship. It's the last race of the cutoff of the round of 8 to see who will be the 4 drivers to race next week at Michigan to go for a championship. And we can't wait to give you all the coverage here tonight for the Stars and Stripes Cup Series here on Freaky Fast Broadcasting. My name is Sam Dyer. With me is Zach Hall, and as well have Robert Moyer Jr. in the background running production. Zach, tonight it's time to start to figure out our final 4, and what's crazy to see, the point standings, everyone is on the line of potentially being bumped out or getting into the next round.
Yeah, man, you took the words right out of my mouth. Cameron Sarton going there and winning last week at Dover changed the whole perspective. Nobody locking themselves in. It is going to be the big unknown here, as they should say here tonight, going into this Atlanta, Motor Speedway. This track now completely changed with the reconfiguration they've had. I'm excited to see how these drivers play with, just the nerves they're going to have throughout this race. No stage points, so they don't have too much to risk here early, so I think we're going to see some conservative drivers here early in this race, especially those drivers in the playoffs. But I think track position here is very valuable also, so I don't know. How do you weigh that out as a driver? It's going to be tough to see.
I've been talking to some of the teams. Some are saying, hey, we're going to linger in the back until the end of the race. Others are saying we're going to be full bore, try to get up front as soon as possible. And like you said, Zach, track position could be very important to see here tonight, as well in the fact there is no stage break. This is going to be the first for us to see a whole race without the stage breaks here at Atlanta, which is the new configuration, supposed to give you more of a super speedway-like type of atmosphere. But Zach, at the same time, this is a super speedway track with all the aspects of the drafting being important, but everything else drastically different from other super speedway tracks.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You can take about 50% of what you have at, the super speedways at Talladega and Daytona, because, you got to have the teamwork. You got to have the draft there still to help you and make moves here tonight. But here in Atlanta, it's a whole different beast. It's only a mile and a half here. These corners are much more tight, much more acute, and much more tire wear is really going to be the big thing that comes into factor. These guys are going to start off with these cars gripped up. They're going to be able to hook it right around the bottom, and they're going to see really probably 2 lanes for the majority of those first beginning starts of the run. But as we get farther and farther into it, it starts to slide back more into that mile and a half style racing, where these guys are going to be fighting the handling mostly, and mostly from what we've heard, it's going to be very, very tight. So you're going to see guys washing up off that bottom, almost sliding up into that second lane, and it's going to get wild at that point once the tire wear kicks in. And then passing at that point will be at a premium. It'll be tough to do, and you're going to have good teamwork to get it done.
And teamwork is going to be the key thing here this evening. We've got 5 teams of real note to watch out for. We've got that of the GRR, Grim Roberts Racing. That's going to be the team that has Jason Gratton trying to make his way into the next round and race for a championship. Then you've also have that of Misfit Motorsports. That's going to be a strong team with 2 playoff drivers on that team, with Scott Rickard, as well as Kyle Bowling and Brian Chu for themselves. Then going to be seeing that of IMI, that's Iowa Motorsports Inc., where they're going to have Brandon Pierce trying to make his way into that of the final round. Then you've got Storm Motorsports, the heavy favorites. Whenever we go to a super speedway track, they're the ones to watch out for. Ken Campbell, Ross Tatum, Christopher Wade, and also Martin Perry. And then the last team to watch out for, it's the most recent team to be joined in to that of Stars and Stripes Cup Series. That's McLovin Motorsports with Joshua Robinson, who is going to be one of our heavy drivers, top of the board, currently in points with the best bubble to work with 13 over that of Jason Gratton. But with that of Josh Robinson, you've got Andrew Hess, Dale Copeland, as well as Thomas Ogle, all searching for some help. And what's interesting about that McLovin Motorsports team, you got Joshua Robinson top of the board points-wise. His teammate Thomas Ogle the furthest down in points. Ogle could be needing a win for himself. And as well, Zach, bonus points are going to be wild to see, because this is the one league where the only bonus points that you're going to be getting is that of having 0 incident points.
Yeah, and that's a huge factor. We've seen already in the last round how much that played into the factor of things coming down to the end. And yeah, you brought it up, Thomas Ogle. They're that last place position. He's 24 points back from his teammate Joshua Robinson tonight. So there's technically still a chance for points there to happen, but I think he needs to really focus on getting as many points as possible. But if he can get up there, position himself in the top 3, The cut line is only 42 points, or sorry, 42 points is what Brandon Pierce has to back to 27 there with Thomas Ogle. So it's a much closer game there. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But those points are so close. And with those 0 incident points, Atlanta, it's very tough to stay out of those incidents. So that could come down to the critical factor, who moves on and who does not. So we're going to have to pay attention to that for sure all night. But about a minute left here in qualifying at the moment. King Campbell is able to put himself atop the board.
And to re-note, actually, it's not McLovin Motorsports. It's actually that of Team Miata to watch out for, as you're seeing here of that of 30 machine rolling on your screen as Ken Campbell topping the board. Zach here at Atlanta, and other factors that also to watch out for, this race actually being 5 laps shorter than what the traditional Atlanta races have been before. Before it was that of 133 laps. Now it's 129 laps. Curious on if that could be any factor to worry about for these drivers, especially on the fuel stint wise of things. If those 5 laps can allow these drivers to push it out to turn this race into a one-stop.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right about that too, because 129 laps here. If you can split that up in half, you're looking at one run being 64 laps, the other run being about 65. And the information that we got coming in here tonight, it's about 60 laps on a solo fuel run. So that is not factoring in the draft. That's pretty much running all by yourself, full throttle for majority of that run. I think that could have a huge factor. So we might be able to see a one-stop possible with some drivers go out there and really focus on saving that fuel.
Well, qualifying is now done. It's time to grid up. And we talked about how track position has the possibility of being extremely important. Well, these are the drivers that are trying to place themselves in the best position to start this race off. And it's one of the drivers that we are heavily watching out for. That's Ken Campbell in the 15. Going to be getting that pole award. And then the driver that's been up front, one of the most consistent from that of qualifying, it's Joshua Robinson on the outside of that front row. Then Dylan Grimm going to be in 3rd place, with Thomas Ogle going to be in 4th, and has those teammates in line on the outside. With that of 5th place going to be Andrew Medlin in the 12 machine. Kyle Bowling going to be in 6th, as well as Jason Gratton with his 2nd berth into the playoffs after last week. He is going to be hoping for a lot of help in 7th place. Will Bussler going to be in 8th. Andrew Hess going to be in 9th, and 10th. It's going to be that of Scott Ricker.
In the 11th position, it's going to be the 25 of Nate Lynch. 12th is going to go to George Kovacic. 13th is going to be the 4 of Aaron Hill. 14th position going to go to Derek Offerman. 15th is going to be Randy Cornwell. 16th is going to be the 53 of Christopher Wade. Last week's winner, Cameron Sarton, will start 17th. 18th is going to be John Dart. Ross Tatum, one of those playoff contenders, start back here in 19th. And rounding out that top 20, it's Zach Kreitz.
Then going to be in that of 21st position, Trey Jackson, as well as that of Travis Dart in 22nd position. And that of Patrick Hastings, going to be in that of 23rd, with Philip Chavez 24th, as well as Brian Lynch and Brian Burchett going to be finishing out our 26 drivers here tonight. And Zach, teammates, always going to be the factor point to talk about. Storm Motorsports, 2 of their championship hopefuls try to make it into the next round. That of Ken Campbell. Ross Tatum was talking to that team and to Ken Campbell, trying to get his point of view on how to take over this race. He was going with the mindset that he's had at almost every super speedway track. That is, be up front, stay up front, lead that lane, while his teammate on the other foot, Ross Tatum, said he's going to stay patient, be in the back, and then try to make that charge a little bit later in this race.
Yeah, I like those 2 strategies. Both of them have the possibility to work out. But, King Campbell, he did the great job of qualifying on pole here. That is really going to allow him to be aggressive and do exactly what he planned. What I'll also be watching out is, can his teammate, Christopher Wade, we've seen those 2 work together so well throughout every single super speedway race. Can they get connected at some point? We know Tatum, like you said, is going to be farther back, so he's going to be looking for a late run up into this race, and that could be interesting because, again, this track's not very wide. If it gets 2x2 here, it's hard to go 3 wide and make those moves up. So track position, I think, can be very valuable, but at the same time, there is a big one lurking around every single corner here in Atlanta. I tell you, you're going to want to stay tuned all night here, folks, because it's going to be one of those wild rides as we decide our final 4.
It's not an if, it's a when. And as well, the drivers have no fast repairs to work with, 3 extra sets of tires in pit road. Like we touched on, fuel run going around that 60+ marker on how far they can go. It's based on how consistent you want to be and how patient will the field be, because it is go time. This is your moment to see who's moving on, who's racing for a championship next week at Michigan. 8 drivers entered and only 4 exit as the Sharp Apparel 200 is green as we start here at Atlanta.
And even start almost, but the big push from that bottom lane, Dylan Grimm going to get the 15 out ahead. Here's that inside lane, takes off here early. Joshua Robinson in the outside lane looking to slide back here, but we'll see, can they get themselves farther back up the street.
We also seen a little bit of scheme change up for drivers, but trying to make a pass already on the line. Dylan Grimm with the momentum to the outside, and this is what we're going to be seeing a lot of, drivers swapping to the outer groove inside where you can find space. You hope the momentum's going to keep you going forward, but lap 1 goes to that of Ken Campbell.
Just like that already, the outside line starting to charge back up with Dylan Grimm jumping up to that top groove, and Campbell having a nice little gap here, but Andrew Medlin with the run coming off of turn 2. He looks to the outside there for a moment, but it looks like he's going to elect to stay on this bottom lane and just continue to push this 15. Is now Jason Gratton. He's moved his way up to third. As you can see those pink banners, those are the playoff drivers here left in this round of 8.
As well as going to be seeing that of Andrew Hess, who is going to be just having the pink machine overall. And Andrew Hess, not one of our playoff drivers to watch out for this evening, but that 91 is Jason Gratton, after given a second chance to go for the playoffs after Kyle McCoy having to have an early exit for himself. Kyle McCoy didn't make it into the round of 8, but had to back out from the playoffs. Wasn't able to race on the 3-time champ, giving Gratton his opportunity to go for a championship. And gotta say, Zach, he certainly is doing his best to move on. He came in 5th in points, just 4 points out from that of Brandon Pierce. This 91 now leading that outer lane.
Yeah, I tell you what, he'll be a huge dark horse if he can make that Final Four. We've seen him be so strong this season at so many different tracks. But I tell you what, with Michigan looming next week as that championship race, that opens up the door for a lot of drivers, in my opinion, with how this car drives there. I tell you, it's going to be an exciting finale there. But tonight, there's going to be a nail-biter here trying to decide who's going to move on, as these first 4 laps here have been pretty calm so far. But I tell you what, these drivers are going to find the aggression here as this race gets later and later.
They certainly will, as staying in line is going to be our front runners. Side by side is what we're going to be seeing a lot of this front pack, but already some drivers going with the opposite approach. Back in 18th position, the second pack already being shown, being led by that of the 94 of Cameron Sarton, who got the win last week, as he's going to be having to help Philip Chavez, also that of Travis Dart. These drivers already about 3 seconds off for a leader and a full 1.5 seconds off the driver in front of him, being that of John Dart.
Yeah, pretty much 3 little packs here for him. This one being led by Cameron Sarton, and then you'd have to go all the way back to around Ross Tatum in 23rd there. He's about another 2 seconds behind this pack being led there by Trey Jackson, Patrick Hasty, and Brian Lynch. So it's definitely a interesting call here to drop back this far early in the going. But I'd say with tire wear being a huge factor, they could gain time as this run goes on if it does stay green. And I'll tell you what, just because it's Atlanta, I won't say we have a guaranteed caution here tonight, because we've seen Stars and Stripes. They have the ability to go clean and green.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that we won't have a caution, but it's more likely that we will, especially with the fact of there not being a stage break. That means these drivers won't have that for sure moment of, all right, let's take a breather, reset. This could be 129 laps of constant reaction. And we all know when it's super speedway racing, that final lap, everything can go crazy, and a big one most likely will happen unless we find ourselves going into overtime and a caution happening at that moment. But up front, watching these drivers bob and weave. We're 8 laps in, and Zach talked about how the draft, keeping with one another, the aspects of super speedway racing, that's where it's traditional here at the new paved, that of Atlanta Motor Speedway. But the new factor of tire wear now starting to show itself.
Yeah, it will really start to show up each and every lap more and more here for these drivers. And you know, I was kind of surprised with how, you know, the top was not going forward there too long. But here after a few laps, the top has seemed to have found something, as now Medlin has been able to get himself past Ken Campbell to get down to that bottom line. But my question is, who is saving and who is not? Because it's tough. You're in this pack. it's going to be a very tough time trying to save it. Ooh, there's a little bottle there for Randy Cornwell, and that's something the syndrome you're going to see here a lot more and more as the night goes on, with that tire wear being a huge factor. These drivers are going to enter the corner and think they can hold that bottom groove, but they're going to be washing up that racetrack, and that second groove's got to watch out for that.
That was something I was actually, when I was talking with Ken Campbell about this race, the drivers really were not feeling secure on where the preferred lanes were. A lot of, testing and trials on where the fast line is. That means drivers might have different approaches on where they want to work. And right now we're seeing that from the 91. Jason Grattan really putting the pinch on the 36 of Will Bustler.
Yeah, and you can see, like you said, the pinch there coming up off that corner, and really that's where it's going to affect them the most, is on that exit. You're not able to unwind that wheel and really relieve the tires of all that load being put on them with you turning that wheel to the left. So it definitely can have an effect, and when someone's on your door like that, that car doesn't want to turn anyway. So the more and more this run goes on, the worse that condition should get. So we'll see how it plays out, but you can see Grattan right there on the door of the 22s. He goes up the racetrack. It's just getting to that point where it's hard to keep it on that red line.
And a driver that could really give us a good picture of what it's like being stuck in the middle and kind of boxed in. The 25 of Nate Lynch. We're going to get on board with that driver, because really everyone's just following in suit. But for a lot of these teams here this evening, they're going to be finding themselves being pinched, squeezed, and Zach, we're going to take a lap to see what it's like in the driver's cockpit.
Yeah, and this is, if you're claustrophobic, I would be not feeling too well at this moment, because, man, you don't have a lot of room. That is one of the big things here I think you got to factor in, is this track is not very wide. It widens out right there on the front straightaway. Then you come to the corners, and it tightens up to almost 3.5, really 4 lanes almost, in my opinion, really at max. And you can see it's another factor of also the vision. You cannot see that well. It's a similar thing you see at super speedway tracks. Just very tough to see up ahead to that next driver ahead of you. But luckily, with everybody moving up out of that line there, it seems like you can see a little bit better here than what you could at Daytona Talladega.
And that is a lap around here at Atlanta. Right when we hopped on board with the 25 of Nate Lynch, kind of got a little bit spooked out of the exit of turn 4. But again, these drivers still keeping it side by side. Is that of Randy Cornwell going to be on the outer groove? He's going to have that of Jason Grattan, still feeling confident on the outside lane, which, if you have watched us here on Freaky Fast Broadcasting before, got to see a small preview of what this race could give us, as they're going to be going 3 wide into the corner. Nate Lynch squeezing, bobbling, and oh boy, trying to hold on. We're going to go 4 wide through the tri-oval, and somehow they keep it straight.
Man, Scott Rickard there with the big aggressive move there. He saw the bottom lane open up with Nate Lynch sliding up to the middle of the racetrack. I think that spooked Nate Lynch even more. And then it was 3 wide and the contact was made. And like you said, for a moment there, 4 wide on the front straight. Luckily, that is one of the widest spots on this track where it's available to do that. But you don't want to be doing it for too long. And already, looking at this, everybody single filed out now after that little bit of a scare. And this is the second Atlanta race I've done now, personally, as a commentator. And this is kind of similar to what I've seen in that race. It seems like as the run goes on, that bottom lane just seems to be the preferred way to go, as it gives you more room to wash up that racetrack. Whereas when you're in that second lane, you can easily get up into that wall.
Yeah, and as someone who's actually raced during one of those Atlanta races, it kind of comes at a shock. You're not expecting the car to wash up. You just feel confident. You're lifting off the gas periodically, just trying to enter these corners. As the leader, you're full bore, you're full throttling at most times. But then around 15 to 20 laps into a run, which we are at, the car will just randomly snap. It will completely tight. It just plows right up the corner. And it's not just one driver that feels that sensation. It almost feels like the whole entire pack as a whole all can't drive in. They got to make sure they've got plenty of space to make it through that stint.
Yeah, it is very interesting, and I tell you, as myself as a driver, I can't wait to actually kind of experience and you get to learn this more and more. So it is definitely something that's different. It's changed so much. There's no track like Atlanta. I mean, it's very similar. It's got the same super speedway package as Daytona and Talladega, but again, with it only being 1.5 miles there, man, that was close racing there between the 22 and the 44. But this place is just one of a kind, and a place where a lot of drivers are, I think, going to use really this first half of the race to learn.
As you're seeing drivers trying to pick and choose where to go, how to place your vehicle to move forward, as That Cornwell as well as Nate Lynch going to be trying to make that outside lane work, but they're going to need another driver or two. That 4 cars in line really seems to be that one pace where you can finally take off, or you just put on a lot of side draft, as the 22 really had to turn down, almost making contact with the 44 Bullet.
Yeah, that was about the 3rd time now I've seen him get pretty close right there on entry and really getting right to the quarter panel. And then look, it's like you said too, Sam, they entered the corner. It looks like everything goes well, but it just all, when it loads up and you get all that center speed build up, the center of the corner, you just wash right up the racetrack. So I think if we see an incident, that is most likely where it's going to come from, is some driver is able to keep it a little bit tucked lower on that 2nd groove, and that bottom groove washes up into him. So we'll have to watch how it's working. But right now, that top side is actually starting to make a charge with Randy Cornwell leading it.
Starting to make some movements up and down as this front group that once was 17 drivers in total is now turned into just 11 as we hop on board with the 25 of Nate Lynch. Get a sense of what Bitcoin Machine is like, as they're going to be thinking about just staying in line, which, gotta say, for a lot of drivers, patience is going to be the key for a lot of them to make it to the end. But we talked about that there were multiple different packs being built up early on. Nate Lynch is going to lead that of Cornwell to the outside. But we are starting to see those 3 groups really start to show their differences now, as at one moment, the 3rd pack was only about 5 seconds off our leaders. They are now 11 seconds off our leaders. This 2nd group that we see on screen, they're now 5 seconds back, and they've got to be careful, because if they lose any more ground, this can be more and more difficult to try to catch up to this lead pack.
Yeah, this is something I see similar at Daytona and Talladega a lot. You see these different packs forming up, and then you'll see this 2nd pack a lot of times. They'll fall back a good portion, and then people start to see, oh man, this race might be going a little bit more green than I thought. Maybe I thought a little more incidents were going to play out, and then people start to get a little bit desperate, and they try to start making their move and start moving up, and you'll actually see sometimes more aggressive moves being made back here as drivers feel like maybe they're being held back by this group. So it can usually be a little bit of a problem spot for the field, but right now you can see they're actually racing somewhat decently hard, not too terribly hard, but they're definitely side by side right now, looking to make as many laps as you know, the farther and farther they get back here, the harder it's going to be to catch up.
And that 2nd pack being led on the inside of Miata team, that being Thomas Ogle as well as Josh Robinson, kind of just running their own race, keep themselves out of trouble. As you look at some of the other drivers deeper in the field, this is the tail end of that 2nd pack. The first, driver all the way back here, 10.5 seconds off of our leaders. So we find Ross Statham, Trey Jackson, that Patrick Hastings, as well as Brian Lynch, and drivers trying to keep themselves out of trouble as Ross Statham dealing with an issue he's had for majority of the season, internet issues, which here at a super speedway track, kind of the worst place to have those types of moments.
Yeah, that is worst case scenario for somebody. You want to have confidence that your connection is going to be stable, especially the track where people are going to be leaning on your bumper. So, and that's a tough break for Ross. Hopefully that clears up for him in this race, and he's able to push himself up into that pack. But definitely well back behind the group now, being 11 seconds back here. But this top group, you can see all of them almost washing up into the wall. It was first the 12 getting up into it. Randy Cornwell in front of them almost did, and that right there was a case of dirty air just from those 3 cars.
Now Andrew Menlin's got to be careful because he's running a little bit slower than he wants to be. Luckily gets into the corner, didn't lose the draft, and able to keep that good momentum. That easily brush into the outside wall. You can lose the draft and go backwards, and oh no, contact's going to be made on the backstretch down below. It's Nate Lynch, Dylan Grimm going to be staying on the apron, and that's something we didn't touch on, Zach. This track, very difficult to bring out a yellow.
Yeah, very similar to Darlington. We have a giant apron here at this racetrack, and usually when stuff goes down there and happens, it does not usually bring out the yellow. And you can see here, Dylan Grimm, he's got that required meatball flag here, so he's got to bring this car to pit road. Most likely, I'd imagine, some type of suspension or toe-link damage on this car. So tough break already, and as it stays green, he's going to be going multiple laps down here possibly.
That's going to be shrinking our top group from 11 drivers now to just 9 drivers in total. As you see here, the 36 Will Bustler trying to work with Ken Campbell. Scott Rickards in this top pack, but all playoff drivers that are still hunting up front were not involved with that incident. That is a blessing to have as Ken Campbell, Scott Rickard, as well as Kyle Bowling in the 44, and that of Jason Gratton, all trying to stay out of trouble and stay out up front.
Yeah, and it's getting a little bit mixy here between these guys. Bustler all over the back bumper of the 15 there, and it's stacked up. But now Cornwell, with all of that mess happening, he has now positioned himself to possibly get into this lead as he has it on the outside, but he hasn't been able to get down in front of King Campbell. And then also, there's King Campbell's teammate of Christopher Wade. If those two get locked up, you know how well they've been proficient at these super speedways. It should be pretty good, a pretty good sign here for this 15.
And for that of Jason Gratton, got to be a little bit irritated to see that his teammate Dylan Grimm involved with that incident, but luckily still has that 22 in line with them. Teammates from that of Grimm Roberts Racing, and right now that of Randy Cornwell, used to be race control for this league, decided to hop on the sticks and hop on the steering wheel coming into that of this season for season 5. Certainly hasn't had a season that he's wanted, but tonight, a track where it's all about being up front, having the track position, he certainly is going for a good run as we're 30 laps into our 129 this evening.
Yeah, already clicking away pretty quickly here. And look at that, Cornwell with the big move off a 2. Great run, able to get down in front of that 15 of King Campbell here as he's going to slide up the racetrack. And you can just see these guys are fighting these cars, actually. That's something, you know, we go to super speedways. The most of the time what you're fighting there is really the pushes you get from drivers. And here it's going to be mostly due to the handling of this race car, just washing up off that bottom lane. And very tough to follow somebody in that dirty air. As you can see there, Cornwell sliding up, but now Wade has that great run out too. He's going to be able to now power to the lead as he's going to have the help of the 36s. Look at that big run they've got.
Massive push, and that's something with these Gen 7s, Cup machines, the next-gen cars that have been worked on throughout this year on iRacing, is trying to figure out how to turn these vehicles that used to be impossible to bump draft to now much more manageable. When you give these bumps, you actually can slam on someone's back bumper, and sometimes as that driver that gets pushed, you don't feel that at all in the fact that you're losing steering or you get extremely loose and out of control. It just feels like a natural bump drafting motion as that of Cornwell stuck in the middle. He's going backwards.
This is going to get a little bit mixy there as, man, these drivers do a great job of keeping it out of each other as the Cornwell comes almost down into the 05 as they luckily get too wide here. But Rickard been able to make those big aggressive moves all night long as that was King Campbell there taking it too wide.
And with all of the jostling and the wreck that happened, that gap starting to dwindle down. That second pack being led by Derek Offerman is just now starting to get a little bit of a sniff of that draft in front of them.
That they are, man. They are definitely catching up to this group, running faster times than our leader, Christopher Wade, is. So they're able to close it down. And again, like you said, Sam, they're getting a sniff of that draft. The closer and closer they get, the more they'll be able to pull up to them. But as they get closer to, they're going to start to get that dirty air off that front of that pack. So it's kind of counterintuitive here in Atlanta a little bit. You know, when we go to Daytona, Talladega, you don't really think about dirty air. You think about just only the draft and trying to be as close to that driver as possible to get as most, you know, big a draft as you can. But here, it is kind of, you know, you want it, but you don't want it at the same time in the corner. So it's very, very different. But you can see visibly it is closing in.
Closing in each and every lap, and it's always a good feeling when you're in that second pack going, okay, we might have been 5 seconds off our leaders. We're now just 2 seconds off the leader. We now have the draft to work with. But with the way that this lead pack has been racing, I don't know if you really want to be there as you see them being 3 wide up ahead. Cornwell being even more aggressive, trying to make some passes in front. And the 20 machine of Derek Offerman, he's seen this pack get closer, but I don't think that he truly wants to get this close anymore.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Sam. He's probably saying, we might want to stay about this far back from these guys. We might not want to get too close. You want to have that reaction time if something does happen big up there in front of them. And yeah, definitely the non-playoff guys, they have been willing to risk it here. And even a few playoff guys up there willing to really risk it early in this race as they know track position is going to be key. And they want to keep themselves up in that pack. And I'm even starting to see a few guys coming off the quarter sideways. So these cars are getting very evil the more they head into this run as we're about 36 laps in. And again, we heard about 60 laps on fuel, but in this draft pack, I think you might be able to save a little bit of fuel.
The Vatican Campbell has also dropped back to third place, the 15, able to save some fuel while his teammate was in that third place for the majority of the beginning of this run. So a lot of flip-flopping on who wants to be leading. So we've got an equal standpoint on how your fuel is running, as all these drivers, to make it to the end, you have to get to lap 65, the start of that lap or the end of that lap. That is your fuel window to try to make it to the end of this race. So everyone's trying to play very nicely at this point. But a team that does not want to be seeing these drivers this far back, Ross Tatum, Trey Jackson, that third pack that we've been giving note on, they are still 11.5 seconds off our leaders. Still a difficult point to be here, Zach, as that second pack has now just caught up to our leaders.
Yeah, that second pack's caught up, and you can see here too also Robinson there we saw for a moment. He was all in no man's land. He'll be back there with that third pack in a matter of a time. As now we had 2 packs up front. It's now 1 giant pack as Offerman and also Aaron Hell have led their way up here. And we'll see, do they have a little bit of extra tire here to go up here and make some moves now they're in this dirty air and in this draft? This is going to be crucial to see if tire saving is this big.
Tire saving, or was it just feeling out the beginnings of this race, especially with the way Randy Cornwell is racing up front and how aggressive the 22 is trying to get up to the lead once again. I don't even know if really saving your tires getting up here is the place you want to be at this current moment, as we are coming up to the start of lap 40. These drivers extremely still feeling that aggression in the early part, and you would think maybe they would start to calm down and realize we're not even at halfway yet, to maybe cool your jets until the final 30 laps, start making these big moves. But the jostling, the old tires, it's all starting to show the phrase here as we continue to get closer and closer to pit stops.
Yeah, it's crazy to think this pack was about half the size only about 10 laps ago. Now we got 16 cars all within a reachable distance here, all the way back from Christopher Wade all the way back to Thomas Ogle. So very, very interesting here. And, like you said, I think some drivers maybe, you start to forget how many laps are in this race, and you start to just go into autopilot mode where you start to race and you go, oh man, maybe I'm not in the right situation here for the right timing. But we're seeing definitely drivers right now trying to make those moves.
As we are getting ourselves closer and closer to when pit stops will happen in the next 20 to 30 laps, hey, drivers might want to get some great information on how much further their fuel can go. And what can give you that great information is iRacing iFlag's digital pit board. iRacing iFlag has themselves the patented iFlag virtual flag system, but as well, they've got a great device for that of the digital pit board, which gives sim drivers some great information, such as the track temperature, the weather conditions, how much fuel, how many laps are left in your fuel tank, as well as your average per these last 5 laps. Plenty of other great items to be found at iRacing iFlag, and if you go find yourself some items that you want to purchase, remember to use our promo code FreakyFast2022 as the drivers continue to get more racy and closer to pit stops.
Yeah, these pit stops are definitely starting to get closer for sure, as within at least 20 laps now those pit stops happen. And like you said, if you want to make a one stop happen here and see if that's possible, I would say you want to stretch it at least here to 65, because that'll give you the option to run 64 in that last run. That'll make you feel a lot more confident, having to save a lot less fuel possibly to do that. But we'll see if anybody elects to go that far. But even the people who look to do a 2-stop here possibly, we could start seeing those pit stops possibly here happening very, very soon.
The problem here, Zach, though, is I don't know when drivers truly want to come into pit road to get their service done. I mean, that is going to be the toughest thing for themselves, is the fact that you've got to make the decision, do I come into pit road or do I stretch the fuel out as long as possible? I'd imagine a lot of drivers thinking about stretching it out as long as possible, because if you come into pit road, you are going at least 1, if not 2 laps down.
Yeah, exactly. This is completely different than a super speedway too of Daytona and Talladega. Normally Daytona and Talladega, you try to get right to that number, hit pit road, but here at the 1.5 mile racetrack, you will go a lap down here. And with a caution looming at really any point on this racetrack, that is where I think they're going to be the most worried about, coming in for an early stop. So I do think most of these guys are going to try to stretch that fuel tank, try to go as far as possible, because they do not want to be left out to dry coming to pit road with a caution coming out. And also, you have to have numbers here also. Just by yourself, you're not fast enough, so you have to make sure you can come down with some other drivers to be able to work together when you come out of pit road.
Well, as these drivers are now 46 laps in, the positioning continues to move. But here's your update on where the 8 playoff drivers are currently on track. Well, 3 of them are in line on our ticker. 3rd, 4th, and that of 6th now moving is going to be that of Ken Campbell in 3rd. 4th's going to be Scott Rickard. 6th is that of Kyle Bowling, who's side by side with Brady Cornwell. Then you got to fall all the way back to 9th place, where we find that of Jason Gratton. Thomas Ogle is going to find himself outside of our top 10 in 11th. Then you got to go a little bit further down is when we start to see some other drivers. 20th position is that of Joshua Robinson, who's back with that now 2nd pack, which was traditionally our 3rd for the majority of this first stint. Then in 21st position is going to be the last runner of Ross Tatum. Zach, they're scattered everywhere, but right now, Joshua Robinson, as well as that of Ross Tatum, they were our top 2 in points, but with where they're running right now, they are not secured to move on to the next round and race for a championship.
Not at all. Yeah, with how close it was coming in here tonight, they cannot risk this. So they're going to have to make sure they gain some spots here later in this race. They're going to most likely, with them being 10 to 12 seconds back, they're either going to have to make this race a one-stop, or they're going to have to really focus on getting a caution here to allow them to get back in the action up front, because at the moment they are well behind the field and it's not going to be very likely for them to move on. But also another big factor too, Brandon Pierce, a no-show here tonight in the 38. He came in here 4th on that cut line. That is a huge factor also.
It's massive for that 38 who was hoping for some type of a miracle run, and it would have been spectacular if he found himself into the playoffs, as well as Thomas Ogle, because it could have been a full rookie lockout on who was racing for a championship, as we had 4 rookies enter the top 8, and only that of going to be potentially 3 could move on for a championship. As well, the only driver that has won a championship previously is running in 4th position right now. That's Scott Rickard in the 05. He was winner of the season 2 championship, and then it's just been Kyle McCoy ever since then. And if you look at the numbers, it's very high that we're going to be seeing a brand new champion here for the Stars and Stripes Cup Series heading into next week.
Yeah, that is very, very a likely chance, you know, because Scott Rickard, he's still going to have to move on here. He came on that outside looking in, like you said, and he's been aggressive here tonight to really make the moves to keep himself up in that top 5. So you got to give him credit, because, man, it could have, definitely been in the same position as Ross Tatum and them, but he knew he was on the outside looking in. He had to come out here and be aggressive tonight, and I like the game plan being shown by this 05 machine here as he still rides in his 4th position. And, ever since Wade's got out front here with about 10 laps ago, he's really been holding on. But, close action between Randy Cornwell, that 22 washing up the racetrack almost up into the 4 Aaron Hill.
The driver that's wanting to get aggressive right behind that group, battling for 5th, 6th, and put him to 7th. That is going to be Thomas Ogle. Thomas Ogle qualified that of 4th place, and I gotta say the 83 has had probably the biggest up and down movement of all drivers. Yes, he doesn't have the biggest mover of the day currently. That is Christopher Wade, up 15 positions. But Thomas Ogle dropped all the way down to that of 18th position at one moment, almost lost the draft to that 2nd group, and now up to 7th and trying to crack the top 5 once again.
Yeah, he's done a great job to get back up to here, and he was, like you said, at one point all the way in the back of that 2nd group. So he's really been on the move here, trying to make his mark here and slide up here and get some track position as this race goes farther and farther here green. But I tell you what, it's tough to make passes though. You get to somebody and you got to really find that opening there to go by them. And look at that, Randy Cornwell again. He's been one of the most aggressive cars out here all night with the side drafts, and that's really what I've noticed. He's been able to make big moves due to that side draft. And if you aren't willing to put it on the door of somebody, it's hard to make those passes, but it also is very, very dangerous.
It's extremely dangerous, as he is going to have to back off, no longer side drafting at that moment, which gives an opening for that inside lane to start moving forward as Ken Campbell, Scott Rickard really start the charge. And now a little bit of a shift for the lead. Will Bustler, who's been 2nd fiddle for the majority of the night, he finally gets his nose underneath that of Christopher Wade, and Wade might be making that decision. It might be time to finally fall into 2nd place and save some fuel.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, when you're that lead car, you're not in that draft. You have all the aerodynamics right on the nose of that car and all the drag being placed on that machine. So Yeah, you're definitely not going to have as good of fuel mileage, but through 1 and 2 there, great run there on that top side, and it was able to really get back down to the bottom here. But look, Randy Cornwell again in this 22 surging back here on the outside. He's got Aaron Hill in the 4, also Thomas Ogle right behind there. Is that outside line? It seems like it has just these ebbs and flows of going back and forth as they find a little bit of speed here as they try to move themselves farther up that order.
I mean, we're looking at how the drivers are positioned. Again, if you're going to be getting the maximum amount of draft, you have to be as close to the driver in front of you as possible. And it seemed like on that run where we visibly saw Christopher Wade almost looked like he was about 5 to 10 miles per hour faster than the 36 through the corner. Just seemed like there just wasn't too much of a gap between the 36 and the 15. Allowed that of Christopher Wade to just stay on the throttle and muscled his way forward, while that outside lane, there's just so much side drafting happening that it's kind of stalling out everyone on where they're at. It's really just the duel between the front runners on who wants to go to the outside. Whoever does of the front two, they're the ones that are going to most likely make the pass on the outside.
Yeah, it's a great point. It really does stall it out. I mean, you really got, ever since the outside lanes got to that third car of King Campbell on the bottom, it's kind of stalled out there, and Will Bustler and Christopher Wade have kind of had their own little battle due to that, as they've had separation due to all that side drafting, pulling those cars back off of them. So you can see now the same thing's happening here to Scott Rickard as he's got his teammate Kyle Bolin there right in behind him trying to make something happen. But lap 58 here, we heard lap 60 was about that window for pitting, but can these top runners be able to stretch it to that 65 point to be able to make it to the end of this race? If you can get in the 64, then you'd have to go 65 on the last, so it still is possible. But man, you definitely would like to stretch it the farthest here, in my opinion, on this first run.
That you certainly would, as we are on lap 59, at start of lap 59. If you're just joining us now on Freaky Fast Broadcasting, you are currently watching the Stars and Stripes Cup Series. This is the cutoff race of the round of 8 to set the stage of our Final Four that will race next week at Michigan, where it will be a one race all about who finds himself winning will win the championship next week at Michigan. But tonight is setting up that stage. We've got 8 drivers that initially came in, 1 not showing up, being that of Brandon Pierce. So it's just 7 drivers trying to make it into the Final Four. And tonight we haven't had any yellows yet, but we've had 1 incident of Nate Lynch, Dylan Grimm making contact back around that of lap 20. And Dylan Grimm currently is still in pit road getting damage repair. We've had tons of different drivers going back all the way to 20th place and making the surge back up to this lead group. Currently right now we've got ourselves that of 3 different distinct groups. We've got a lead pack that's being led by that of Christopher Wade, who's been shifting between Christopher Wade or his teammate of Ken Campbell leading this race. And then you got to fall all the way back to 12, where Derek Offerman is leading the second pack of drivers. Then all the way back in 20th is that of Joshua Robinson, who's leading the third pack. As right now we are closing in on our one and only stop of the day, potentially at lap 65. Well, at least that's when the window opens, but any point after that, drivers can make their final pit stop, and we can't wait to see who's going to get it done, as we have been giving you the coverage here on Freaky Fast Broadcasting. My name is Sam Dyer. With me is Zach Hall. Also got that Rock Warrior Jr. running productions in the background. Zach, continue to cross our fingers that we keep ourselves green, but all the drivers, I was talking with some of them, there's been a very small amount of practice of green flag pit stops. Drivers really don't know how that's going to go around, as we are closing in on that opportunity.
Yeah, we always see Daytona and Talladega pit stops are super busy pit roads, but they also have giant straightaways that lead up to them. This right here at Atlanta, a completely different beast. It's going to be tough getting into pit road. Now, they did move that pit lane entry back to allow them to get a little bit deeper into there. But man, I tell you what, that is going to be one of the most interesting moments, and it's going to be coming up here in really the next 2 to 3 laps, in my opinion. And it's just showing that draft here is really helping these guys save some fuel.
As drivers are over the radio discussing when do you want to come into pit road openly, and as well, I think that's why we're starting to see drivers really single file out. This is the traditional phasing that we see at that of Talladega or Daytona, super speedway races, giving each other plenty of room, single filing, and already here comes a driver. It's going to be that of Zach Kreitz, all on his own. Then as well up front, Randy Cornwell is going to be hitting pit road for the 22. And that is not the way you want to come into pit road. Just coming in with only 2 drivers is practically like coming into pit road by yourself.
Yeah, that is going to be very tough to come back from. And we've seen Cornwell has been aggressive all night long. You got to wonder, Has he been a little too aggressive, and that didn't allow him to save the fuel that he needed to get to that marker to make this a one-stop? So going to be interesting to see who else can get there, but it seems like these guys going to be going on for 65. That means the one-stop is going to be there. Sorry.
It is going to be there, and then the next two drivers, Joshua Robinson, Ross Tatum, both coming in together, and they're going to be just by themselves. That's going to be two drivers alone. This is not looking good for the two drivers that were our heavy favorites to move on to the next round. The two rookies, Joshua Robinson, Ross Tatum, they might need a yellow as here comes up front the lead pack making some decisions into pit road. It's Christopher Wade, Ken Campbell, as well as Andrew Medlin, that of Aaron Hale, and many more following soon.
Yeah, also Jason Gratton, one of the playoff drivers. Then a couple drivers from that back group also come. As this going to be Derek Hoffman, Brian Burchett, Cameron Sarton, and Travis Dart. So they got to their number. They know now they can go 64 laps to the end of this race. We'll see, does this next group look to come in as Scott Rickard and Kyle Bowling? We know these guys are teammates. They should be coming down together soon.
As they continue to stay out for another lap, this is just going to be giving you an advantage on your tires for these drivers. As these drivers and packs start to dwindle down smaller and smaller, now the question starts to loom, are these packs too small to put down at extremely quick times? As into pit road now going to be John Dart as well as Philip Chavez. Those two drivers now coming into their spots. Will Bustler going to be keeping himself side by side to the inside, expecting to come into pit road. Might be the 36, and looks like he will stay out, which this is interesting to show, as now you're just losing time by being side by side.
Yeah, losing time, no doubt, as here goes Bowling in, Scott Rickard by him, and this just shows that if you were in that, bottom lane, really riding in the draft for the majority of the run like these guys were, you're able to save a ton of fuel here at Atlanta. And right now, these guys haven't even made a flinch to come to pit road. We'll see if they elect to do it this time. But I tell you what, the one thing that's going to be very, very interesting is I think we're going to see a bunch of split up packs, 3, 4, 5 cars, really all around the field.
As it's going to matter whoever has the biggest group, most likely is going to be the one that finds himself either going to be up front or moving up front the fastest for themselves, as they're leading the drivers that have already come to pit road. It's Christopher Wade, Ken Campbell, Andrew Medlin, which, Zach, no surprise that we're seeing the Storm Motorsports drivers work together so well of Christopher Wade and Ken Campbell.
Yeah, no doubt. Those two have always just had that knack to get together and really just play the race exactly how they wanted. And we're seeing two teammates do something similar here, but with them being the only two out here, I'm going to be concerned how much speed and how much time they're giving up to the newer tires behind them, because the thing about it, yes, the newer tires are nice to have, but these guys here right now, really running about the same lap times once they've gotten to that 32-second bracket. They've been in a 31.8 in the last few laps, but really around the 32-second lap, once you get there, it kind of just evens out. So if you give up this much time, will you be able to gain it back is my question. But, man, they've saved a ton of fuel.
They save plenty of fuel, but like you said, they're running around a 32 lap second by themselves, which if we look at what are that of Christopher Wade, that first group of drivers that came into pit road, they're running a 30.8 while their leaders just put down a 32.2. They're losing over a second each lap that they decide to stay out there, which they've done so for the past 3 laps. They will lose the draft of our leaders in potentially the second pack that's the biggest so far right now.
Yeah, this is an interesting call from them. I think they're going to hit pit road this time, as we see on board here from Kyle Bowling. Yes, they do. They're going to come down here and get down to the 45 miles an hour. But, ooh, Scott Rickard, major mistake there, locking up. Hopefully no black flags for him. Don't see anything yet from race control there for him. But, man, that definitely checked them up a little bit here now, as they'll have to get back up to speed. And we'll see how much time did they actually lose, as Campbell and these guys have been well up to speed already.
They've been up to speed, and they've been trying to stay ahead of the second pack. Ken Campbell, Andrew Medlin, they are now going to be catching up with Nate Lynch, who Nate Lynch is the 25 machine, the only driver that was caught with a speeding penalty and had to stay in pit road for over 40 seconds. Currently 2 laps down is that 25 machine. As the drivers cycle through the one pit stop, the money stop, it's in, and now it's all about taking us to the end. And Zach, right before we go to a commercial break, looking at where drivers lied, the 44, the 05, they are now back to 8th and 6th place. They have lost touch to that second pack. They're about to fall to the third pack that's out there, which is being led by Will Bustler.
Yeah, and if you look at that, that's about 7 to 8 seconds behind this group. So that just shows you how much time you can lose. And again, like I said, the tires even out pretty quickly, actually. So I don't think they're going to be able to continuously gain on this group up here. It's going to be a wild ending, but I tell you what, just like I thought, all these little packs all separated into little groups.
Currently, after that pit cycle is done, 24 drivers of our 26 are on the lead lap, and it's all about taking it to the end, which that's what we're going to do as we're going to take a quick side-by-side break. Right now, it is the Storm Motorsports drivers of Christopher Wade, Ken Campbell leading the charge. This is the cutoff race. After tonight, championship running starts next week at Michigan. But for tonight, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll take you to the end here on Freaking Fast Broadcasting.
the wrecking. They're splitting, and it's a complete mayhem.
We have a wreck at the front. 19 goes down into the 7, takes out the 00.
They're 5 wide behind for fifth. Oh my. 5 wide. Here's a single. The worst is it. They're already wrecking into turn 1, and now coming through that of turn 2. This is it, the Daytona. Oh no, the wrecking contact. Sets gets into the wall. Gonna be scattering on the outside. Drivers on the apron. Drivers coming out of nowhere. Edison on the outside trying to get the win. And it's William Edison stealing it at the line.
Into the wall. The 18 trying to block. 77 getting to the 18. That leaves 3 of TJ Roberts. 17 to Gavin Rogers. 3 of TJ Roberts is gonna steal the win here.
Went second fiddle so many times last season. Christopher Wade wins the season 5 Daytona 200.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Stars and Stripes Cup Series on Freaky Fast Broadcasting. My name is Sam Dyer. With me is Zach Hall and Robert Moyer running the productions in the background as we are coming up the start of lap 85 of 129. These drivers have kept it clean green all the way through at this moment. As you're watching the Sharp Apparel 200 here at Atlanta, it's the cutoff race of playoff racing action, as each driver is trying to set the stage on who is making the final 4 to race for the championship next week at Michigan. As 7 drivers were able to show up here this evening, as Brandon Pierce did miss tonight's venue and race. So it's only 7 drivers aiming for 4 spots. And Zach, right now, we are already done with green flag pit stops. These drivers are making it to the end, but interesting to see how split up the field is.
Yeah, man, it just shows you when you come to pit road, the timing is every single thing here. And those 3 up front have been able to do the most excellent job of anybody. They've had about a 4-second gap, and it's almost continuously grew to back to Aaron Hill in that 4th position. So going to be interesting to see how these guys can try to make a charge up to these top 3. But right now, they look in a very well-off position. But I will say the 3rd pack of group of cars has really been one of the fastest on the racetrack, and that's back there here with Thomas Ogle, Scott Rickard, Kyle Bowling. Remember, they did elect to take a little bit later pit stop and lost the majority of time, but they're still about 6 seconds back from that group. It's going to be tough to run that down here in these closing laps.
It makes sense of why they're driving as aggressive as they are, because they need to get up front. For that of Scott Rickard and Kyle Bowling, they came in being drivers outside of the good to move on to the next round. Same for Jason Gradden, who's in 6th place. All 3 drivers that need to have a great run here this evening. Same for Thomas Ogle. They're all up inside of our top 10 currently. The drivers that are in a little bit of a scare, Joshua Robinson, Ross Statham, they're back in 18th, 19th position. If they lose any more touch to lead positions, they are in a questionable spot of coming in as our top 2 drivers and not making it to the next round, which, Zach, is very rare to see, but very possible due to the fact of Cameron Sarton's win last week at Dover.
Yeah, with that win, it didn't allow none of those drivers to lock themselves in. You know, Robinson had the best race of anybody in the playoffs, but it was not enough to guarantee him a guaranteed spot for next week at Michigan for that championship 4. And him and Ross Tatum, they've had a similar strategy of, you know, dropping back here, riding in the field. I can guarantee you right now they're questioning, going, man, I did not expect this race to be like this. This is not exactly how they thought it was going to play out. They're going to need some type of caution, because right now the farthest they're going to probably get up to is about the 14th position. They're in a pack right now that gets up to Derek Hoffman in 14th, but that's about as far as they're going to be able to go. It's another about 7 seconds up to 13th of Brian Burchett. So tough break for them, but they need to gain as many points as possible just to maybe get lucky here and maybe point themselves in.
See there, Zach Kreitz going to be stuck to the high lane. That 3rd group that we've been talking about being the fastest of everyone on track has finally caught up to the 2nd pack. And here we go. Let's double the group, double the speed, as they're now going to be making the charge to try to catch up to our leaders, which is now a 4-second gap lead. As we are now in the late goings of tonight's race, it's time to see for the final stage, the final quarter of this run. Zach, this is what we've been waiting for on how will the drivers have been dominant at the super speedway tracks of Christopher Wade, Ken Campbell, both drivers trying to have some good runs this evening. Ken Campbell's trying to get his win to lock himself into that of the championship run. How will they be able to defend the speed that's on the way?
Yeah, that's a big question. It's a big group of cars, and those newer tires do seem to be having a little bit of help here and an effect on it. I mean, you got to think, it was 8 seconds at one point back to Scott Ricker and Kyle Bowling, all the way up to Christopher Wade. It's now only 4 seconds. They've cut that down by half. You know, I do think the more and more we get farther into this run, as we're starting to get into about the 3170 bracket with our leaders up front, I think we're going to get to that more of a point where it starts to even out just that little bit more, and it's harder to gain that time. But if they can slowly, methodically, each and every lap click away at that lead and then get to that draft and start to get the pull off of those drivers up ahead, which will happen about, I'd say, about a second and a half here at Atlanta to about a second, it could very well start to snowball and they catch right back up. But it's going to be a tough ordeal. They got to work very well together, and I've seen a lot of good coordination between that really 5-car group that's been making the charge.
They've been making the charge, but if you look at the timing and you look at the math, you try to do, if they continue at the pace that they're going, this group could be 5 laps shy from even catching up to that lead pack. But luckily they will have the draft in that last second to close in. So that is going to be a little bit of factors that could change up the numbers, but it is looking very close. And as well, like you said, with the fact that these tires could equal out, could see that plateau, Thomas Ogle, Scott Ricker, Kyle Bowling, they've all have to start hitting their marks, and it could be advantageous to put the 44 and the 05 leading this pack, and Thomas Ogle just becoming a pusher and falling in line.
Yeah, because I'm starting to see already those times start to even out. That was about 2/10 they gained that lap, but the lap before was only about a half of a tenth. So, at that pace, it wouldn't be enough, and they're going to need to really quickly close in. So I think you're exactly right, Sam. They might want to put that 44 or that 05 lead in this group to have that cleanest air to those newest tires. But we'll see. Maybe they feel like that is a better pushing situation to have those new tires just pushing older tires out front. So we'll see if they can start to continue this headway. But again, right there, only about a half of a tenth. So every other lap, if it's only a half a tenth, that's not going to work out.
And we have our camera set on this second pack, seeing how they're running right now, and put our cameras to the lead of this group. Thomas Ogle, Scott Rickard, they are starting to put a little bit more pressure on one another. Scott Rickard really using the bumper, which the last couple of weeks and honestly the last couple of months, iRacing has done a great job enabling these Gen 7 Cup cars to really be able to bump track with one another without getting that lead car completely out of shape, which is now allowing Scott Rickard to really try to utilize the bump drafting. But that now is going to be putting on the front bumper and the pressure on the engine for Scott Rickard to see if he can even last to the end of this race with that aggressive pushing, as that last lap, it was almost practically equal on the times, not gaining anything on our leaders.
Yeah, I think at some point here, you might have to see Scott Rickard. I mean, look how close he can get right to the bumper of that 83 machine. They might want to try to switch this over, try to get him out front here with these new tires with his teammate Kyle Bowling pushing him. I think at that point, they might be able to make some headway, but it's just not working out. The lap times have started to even out, even our leader, Christopher Wade, faster than this group last time by. So at this point, they got to start to figure out their situation, because that time is starting to dwindle that they're gaining.
Starting to dwindle just slightly as, again, the laps get closer and closer to the end of this race, which is also going to put some pressure on how these drivers are going to be points-wise moving forward. Again, this race, if you get a win and you're one of our playoff drivers, you automatically make your puncher ticket to race for the championship next week for the Final Four, the last race of the season. But for everyone else that is not up front, you need to be as far ahead as possible from all your other competitors, because it was so close between where everyone was at. With the fact that Brandon Pierce did not show up here tonight, it now puts Jason Gratton on that bubble spot with only a 2-point advantage over Kyle Bowling, and only that of a 7-point advantage over that of Scott Rickard, and also only 11 points over that of Thomas Ogle. It is even closer of a difference on who could be moving into that final spot than it was originally coming in, with Pierce being that bubble driver.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be so close between all these drivers, because we still got to factor in that 0 incidents penalty. If you can get out of here with that, that'll really help your cause too, because that'll really help you gain any little bit of position you can. But I tell you, with Robinson, Tatum still back in 16th and 17th, it doesn't look very good for them, especially with Scott Rickard able to move himself to the 5th, and especially Kyle Bowling up to 6th. And I expect maybe those two to be able to get past Thomas Ogle here, who, in my opinion, almost needs to go up there and try to get a win with Kyle Bowling and Scott Rickard right behind him.
When we think about that 0 incident point, again, that 0 incidences, it's 5 extra bonus points to be given to yourself. There's no other bonus points to be grabbed for these drivers. And as well, those 5 extra bonus points, Jason Gratton's in a tricky spot because he almost got sideswiped by the 22 of Randy Cornwell back in the first 20 laps of this race. So we don't even know if that incident would even cost a point for the 91, which he would be in a very disastrous point of this race if he did lose those bonus points.
Yeah, those 5 bonus points are so critical, man, and it's going to come back to possibly be that deciding factor down for this final 4. And as you can see here on our driver cam, Andrew Medlin, he looks cool, calm, and collected here as they've got that gap, but it's only 3.5 seconds now. They have started to make a little headway here the last few laps, but they need to continue that if they want to have a chance here come down to the end. As you can see, these top 3, they've kind of been a little bit separated. They've had a good sizable gap in between them, while the rest of that pack behind them has been very stacked up.
But Zach, something that is going to change this race and the dynamic of this venture, our top 3, they've been running by themselves, haven't been having to deal with lap traffic. It's been run your own race. Well, they are now a 1.5 seconds off of a last lap, last pack group that are starting to get very racy in front of them, which could bog down our top 3.
That it very well could, man. That is a giant group of traffic there right ahead of them. Like you said, I mean, it's 5 cars, but they were all racing side by side. They've gotten single filed out now, but it could definitely come down to be a factor. I mean, you got George Kovacic in there. You got Brian Lynch. You got Philip Chavez there. You also got Trey Jackson and Patrick Hasty. This could all be a huge factor here, but it also could help them, save some fuel possibly even, because I worry about Christopher Wade. He's been out here up front the whole entire time. We saw him go 65 laps that last time, but can he, stretch it to the 64 here, where we've seen Cornwell not be able to do that here earlier in this race? We'll have to see. It not being in that pack and not, being in that huge group, can they save the fuel to make it to the end?
And already over the radio for that pack that our leaders are closing up to, they're starting to even go 3 wide with how racy they're getting. And I gotta say, if you're our leaders, Christopher Wade, this is a terrible feeling, knowing that you've been so fast, you've been holding off that second group, and it could go all up in smoke in an instant. You could see that pack just diminish away because this group that they're catching up to are running about 0.3 slower than what our leaders are running. And they're going to be side by side utilizing the side draft, and it's just going to make things very difficult for our top 3 to get by this lap traffic. And they obviously, if they try to attach to this lead group and they start wiggling a lot, that could change how the airflow is, and as well could slow down this lead pack.
Yeah, and I think some of these guys are having some mistakes up here. It looks like George Kovacic just going to let him go by here, knowing the situation. But Patrick Hasty in the 9, he got extremely loose coming off of 2, and that caused the stack up there right ahead of these guys, and that's going to be the problem here. They need to make a clean, methodical pass here, not lose any time, because that group behind them is still catching up. And again, if they start to get the draft off of these 3 cars up ahead, they will start to close even more. So we'll see how it plays out, but they're on them now.
They're already here. They're in the way. They're side drafting with one another, and our leaders now are stuck. They have to stay in line as Philip Chavez continues to stay side by side, and that is the bog down that the leaders did not want to have, as now they've already lost over that of 0.3 to the pack behind them.
Yeah, and it's going to continue to snowball from here. They got to get by these guys quickly, but with it being side by side like this, it's just slowing them down more and more as Philip Chavez there in the 8 is trying to hold on to whatever he can here. But now you can see Wade got side by side with him, but hasn't been able to clear, as now the 15 and the 12 need to stack up, push this 53 by. But you can see just the difference, the speed being side by side here, as that group behind him is now closing in super quickly.
It continues to close in, and with all of that despair that they just felt, losing over a half a second in that one altercation of trying to get by cars. And you see this second pack riding on 4 with Thomas Ogle. It was 3 seconds the difference between themselves and the leader. It's now 2.5 seconds as the laps continue to tick away. 20 laps to go here tonight.
Oh man, I think this is gonna get very, very close here coming down to the end because again, Wade is caught up to that 3 cars up ahead of him, but it seems like from there has stalled out and the lap times have fell away. They're running about 3180s by themselves and in the 70s every now and then to now being well out of that. So we'll see, can they look to formulate and get around them, because this second group's also going to have that issue too, but will it happen as they've gotten caught up by then is going to be the huge question.
I don't think it should be as aggressively hurting them because Philip Chavez isn't in the draft with other drivers. I think this 8 machine easily should be passed, but that's if Philip Chavez goes to the high line and just lets the second pack go on by, as our leaders, with that of Christopher Wade, Ken Campbell, Andrew Medlin, they're trying to utilize and work with this other group, but they're just not holding a line that the 53 likes. He'll go underneath that of Nate Lynch, and now Nate Lynch is going to be the parachute to hold off this group for a little bit.
Yeah, we'll see if he can hold him back, but it looks like not going to be able to. Luckily, no side draft slowing him down there, but again, the damage has pretty much been done because right now it's only about a 2-second gap as they keep closing it down. And with 18 laps to go, the fresher tires in Rickard's camp and Kyle Bowling, I think this looks good for these drivers to try to close it down because still only 2 lap cars remain ahead.
Philip Chavez now going to become that toe to pull this group closer and closer, as now they're about a 1.5 seconds off of that of third place runner of Andrew Medlin, making that a little bit less than a 1.5 seconds because they've got Philip Chavez's and Nate Lynch's bumper now to attach to and try to pull them along. 17, let's make it 16 laps to go for Christopher Wade, Ken Campbell, Andrew Medlin, Thomas Ogle, 16 laps away from deciding who's going to be in our final 4 next week at Michigan. And Zach, still, we don't even know who could be there because obviously, super speedway track, we haven't seen a yellow yet. We've seen some contact that took out Dylan Grimm earlier. We've seen yellow flags. I mean, we haven't seen any yellow flags, but we've seen black flags be thrown for mistakes in pit road. Well, the big one, we always say it, it's not when, I mean, it's not if, it's when, and it's coming up here most likely very soon when the second pack catches up to our leaders.
Oh, I expect big aggressive moves to start being made when this second pack catches up here because they have the advantage here now. They've been able to drive themselves up here. Can they get themselves close enough to be able to make the move? Scott Rickard, we know how aggressive he's been all season long. He wants to go fight for another championship and be a multi-time champion here at Stars and Stripes. This will be his shot as we're riding on board with Ogle. You can just see they're closing it down, but I tell you what, Wade and Campbell, they're trying to get away and get past these lappers up ahead.
What makes this lead group, this second pack that's just caught up, even more dangerous, Zach, is all four of the drivers that were outside of the championship that needed a win or at least needed a fantastic points day. They're in this group, and here we go. Lap traffic lead drivers all getting mixy now as that group that was once up front, just 3 drivers, well, let's expand it. It is now 9 drivers in this pack, all trying to go for a win. You've got that of Jason Grattan in the tail end of this group, as well as Kyle Bowling, Scott Rickard, Thomas Ogle, Ken Campbell. All these drivers hoping to be in our final 4.
Yeah, you also got the battle for the lucky dog right in the middle of this pack too. They know if the incident happens here, they want to be on that lead lap to have some type of shot there coming down to the end of this race. I think that's why they fought so hard, and even Trey Jackson has been the last one yet to hold the leaders off. But Medlin, Campbell, and Wade, they got the contenders behind them now as Ogle, Rickard, and Bowling have driven their way up here. You also got Hell and Andrew Hess right in tow.
So cool. That is Scott Rickard going to be diving it down low. Going to be now making it too wide, getting underneath the 9 machine. Andrew Medlin's going to drop down, put the defensive block, put him in a box. And oh no, Thomas Ogle, Patrick Hastings, a little bit of a shove, a little bit of a tap. And that's not the 0 incident points that you need. They're still going to be scrapping, holding on straight is this group. And once we said lap traffic and lead cars could be detrimental. And for the 83, that little bit of contact could be his championship hopes thrown away.
That it possibly could be there to now clear Patrick Hastings in the 9. They're going to have a run on Andrew Medlin, but the stack up is real as Trey Jackson has fit himself in between the teammates of the 15 of Ken Campbell and Christopher Wade, as with 11 laps to go here, it's all heating up in Atlanta.
Going to be seeing that of Christopher Wade holding suit. Now he's going to be seeing his teammate Ken Campbell behind him. These were the duo, the drivers that found themselves into victory lane to start the season off. Last season, for season 4, it was Ken Campbell that found himself with all the help, all the surge to find himself in a great position to start out the season. But to start this season off for season 5, Christopher Wade was the winner back at Daytona. But for that of Ken Campbell, he came in, one of our drivers that have been up front, came in third in points, had a decent buffer of 10 points over that of Jason Grattan. Well, he now needs to make sure that he stays up in the top 5, top 10 if he wants a hope to battle for a championship. But here's a driver that's trying to bump him out. Here's 2 drivers trying to bump him out. 3 drivers that are trying to bump him out. It's Thomas Ogle, Scott Rickard, and Kyle Bowling all trying to make the surge forward.
Thomas Ogle looking for his first career win here at Stars and Stripes. His claim came so close so many times earlier in the season. Bristol got away from him, but here tonight at Atlanta, he's going to need this win to possibly move himself on. And with only 9 laps to go, he's been able to get side by side here with Medlin. But these 2 teammates, we've seen them, Christopher Wade and Ken Campbell, all night long be able to work together so well. And can they hold back this hard charge from the drivers behind them?
Driver that's going to be 8 miles per hour slower than this field. Derek Offerman, here we go. Time to play a little bit of do-si-do. How do you get by the lap car that's so much slower than you? The 20 going to hold his line on the inside, which is going to force everyone to go high. Offerman trying to get down to the apron, and luckily does. A scary situation for our leader, but they hold on now. 8 laps to go. This lead pack, it's 9 drivers on the lead lap, but we also got the cluster of 5 lap cars all mingled in between.
That we do. This has really mixed things up now. As we see Rickard and now Bowling. He's actually getting past Rickard is now, again, the outside line. It seems like you can get up there, make some moves, but it's tough to get past really that 3rd car on the bottom lane. And we've seen that similar all night long. Christopher Wade, though, has his teammate Ken Campbell here. Can they weather this storm? You know, also the fact is they've been running a lot slower lap times throughout the majority of this run. Their tires could be a little bit fresher due to that. And even behind them, Ogle up into the wall. That's a tough break for an 83s. Now they're 3 wide as hell, and Hess go right by him also.
And Thomas Ogle, one of the drivers that's in practically a must-win scenario with how close everyone is that are on the points. He needed some misfortunes from the drivers in front of him in points. That being Scott Rickard, Kyle Bowling, and Jason Grattan. On top of that of having Brandon Pierce out of this race, it's really the challenge of who can beat out Jason Grattan in points. And for that 91 machine, he's 8th currently, just trying to keep that nose out of trouble. And that would be the ultimate goal for the 91 machine as they continue to race up front, coming to 5 laps to go. And a driver that's found himself in a lucky situation, Scott Rickard back in 5th for the 05. He's hoping the luck can swing his way because he also, with how close everyone's running, might need a win to get in.
That he very well might. We also might have Robinson and Tatum getting knocked out as both of those drivers are 13th and 14th. They can possibly gain 2 more positions up to 11th and 12th, but they might need it here to move on to the next round with only 5 laps remaining. Who would have thought this race has went clean and green so far? Does that big wreck loom around the corner though?
5. Let's keep it rolling for these drivers. 4 more times to get around this course, and only 4 drivers make it out and into racing for a championship next week. It's been the talking point all week long. Who is going to survive the unknown, the wild card race? Super speedway with some tire wear that you got to worry about. They turn this race into a one-stop, but Zach, that battling going on for 5th place, for also for 7th. We could start to see that big one trickling in because everyone's hopes for winning here tonight starting to loom higher. 3 laps to go now.
And Campbell doesn't need this. He came in here very well off in points, but he needs to make sure he keeps himself in position not to get wrecked here. He's up on that top line now as he slid up off the bottom, allowing Andrew Medlin to get there. He's going to need some help, but it's going to be Bowling and Rickard who are the big movers here on those fresher tires, looking to maybe make something happen here at the end. But Medlin now jumps up. This is getting a little bit dicey. When do we see an incident?
Bowling, who was really finding his own groove last round for the round of that of 12. He then sat a little bit of a blip last week, but the 44 hitting his marks, placing himself in a position to potentially try to bunch and push his way for a championship. Now going to be in 3rd place as you see our front 2 non-playoff contenders just trying to find themselves into victory lane. Blocking happening up front. Got to be careful, and here comes the 44 on the outside. He has to back off, almost contact. track as they're heading through 3 and 4. It's time to see some 3-wide action on who's going to make the playoffs. Across the line, it's your freaky fast white flag. Here we go.
Contact is made as Andrew Medlin in the grass. He's now going to have to come back on the racing surface. They're going to make this official as the white flag's out. No cautions available as Bowling now up into the wall and the wrecking.
Spun around. He got wrecked, placed into the wall. The 44 potentially not going to make it into the playoffs. Scott Rickard on the outside getting the bump from Hess. And then it's going to be Ken Campbell. But Christopher Wade, he's trying to hold on. They're going to beat that of 5 drivers hoping for the best. The 05, he needs the win to move on to the playoffs, to race for a championship. But across the line, it's Christopher Wade. And now we bring out the math because Zach, with all the jostling, with that of Medlin, and also seeing other drivers where they're placed, drivers don't know whether they're going to be moving on for a championship or not.
That they don't. And I tell you what, Robinson and Ross Tatum will come home with a 9th and 10th place finish. Will that be enough to move them on? Did they have 0 incidents to get the 5 bonus points? But man, oh man, I think the really only person we can for sure maybe say is in is possibly that 15 of King Campbell at the moment, and maybe Jason Gratton as they come on 5th and 6th. It's just going to come down. Did they get 0 incidents here after this race is concluded? And we can actually see that now.
We're starting to see the numbers clicking in. Joshua Robinson going to be having 0 incident points. That is exactly what he needs. With where he finished, that 30 will be racing for a championship. Ross Tatum as well gets bonus points. Where he finished, he is going to be good to move on and race for a championship, which then puts us in the tricky spot where drivers lie, which Ken Campbell, he'll get 0 incident points. He should be good to move on, which puts us in that one spot of drivers trying to point themselves in, which we'll do the math. We'll figure it out as when we come back, we'll have our post-race show. We'll talk to our top 3. We'll do the math to figure out who's in, who's out, who's racing for the championship. We'll find out in just a few moments. We'll be back for our post-race show. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the post-race show here on Freaky Fast Broadcasting. Got myself, Sam Dyer, with Zach Hall, as well as Robert Moyer running the productions in the background. We just saw something that is very rare to see, and that is a fully green start-to-finish race here at the newly paved Atlanta, the Super Speedway track, with lots of action all around. And tonight, what a wild race it was. It was our cutoff race to see who was racing for the championship next week at Michigan. The stage is set. We'll get to who's in and who's out in just a few moments, but we're going to start things off with our interviews with our top 3, with starting off with 3rd place finisher Andrew Hess. As we got the 54 up in the booth, Andrew, it's Sam and Zach up in the booth. Congratulations on a 3rd place finish. Man, how are you feeling after going straight green all the way through here tonight?
Honestly, I think it was harder just trying to catch that lead back than it was once we got up there. Then I was just kind of reacting. But I hope it was enjoyable for you guys because it was kind of nuts from the cockpit.
That it definitely was, man. I tell you, going into this race, what was the expectation? Did you feel like this was even possible to keep it clean and green?
I mean, I guess when we talk strategy prior to the race, we always assume it's going to go green. So it's not necessarily a shock when it does because I think everyone wants a good green race that has a little strategy, a little maneuvering, and stuff like that. But um, compared to Dega, I fully expected a wreck there at the end or a bigger one.
I think we all were expecting that as well. Andrew, again, congratulations on a third place finish. We're heading to Michigan to finish the season off. How are you feeling like you can try to have the best momentum carrying into the next season?
Well, I think that's probably the big thing is going to Michigan momentum. You want it at the racetrack, and I feel like as a team we have good momentum and ending this year. I think I don't think Tom made it tonight, but I think Josh moved on. So we'll see what happens next week, and I think we'll be okay going in the future.
Well, Andrew, congratulations again on third. And before we let you go, the floor is yours for any shout outs.
Oh, definitely you guys. You always put on a great broadcast. If you're not watching, you're definitely missing out, especially on a race like this. I'm sure it was very action packed there at the end. So I'm glad you guys are here putting us out there and hope we can do you guys proud. And thanks for the league owners for doing a great job and putting this product out there.
That is going to be third place finisher here tonight of Andrew Hess. Congratulations and good luck heading to Michigan next week.
Thanks, guys.
Let's go from third place. Let's check out second place as Scott Rickard tried everything in his power to get the win. Scott, it's Sam and Zach up at the booth. Congratulations on second place. I know it wasn't the position that you wanted at the end of the day, but man, how are you feeling after that incredible run and surge to be where you were at the end?
A little bit more mad at my mistake last week with going to pit road in the last check thing to speed. If it wasn't for that, I'm probably not making the playoffs. I'm pretty sure I need to win where everybody else finished, but I'll take a second because I still prefer Atlanta. I'm not a plate guy. I don't like plates.
Yeah, I tell you, Scott, it was definitely wild to see this thing go clean and green all the way to the end. We've seen you and your teammates stretch it a little bit farther than anybody here tonight on the fuel and the tires. Was that kind of the plan going into it to have a little bit of advantage there coming down to the end?
Yeah, we're sitting there the first run just being like, let's go as far as we can. Just make sure we have enough fuel and not worry about fuel the rest of the race. If it does go green.
Well, there's Scott, an incredible run for yourself. I know that you're looking at the points, doesn't look like you're going to be having that championship. Hope for going for another one with where everyone lied, but this is your final thoughts. Also the floor is yours for any thanks. But how are you feeling overall with how this season went for yourself?
It's been better than I expected at the end of the season. Yeah, at least got to keep my road course win record going. Now, I was a little skeptical of this car in a road course before the season, but at least I got to keep that for the season. And honestly,
Yeah.
ready to go try to win next week at this point.
Try to be the stealer of the show. But Scott, as always, the floor is yours for any shout outs.
Everybody at the team and my dog.
That is going to be the 05 Scott Rickard, season 2 champ. Not going to be able to go for a championship this season, but congratulations on second place and good luck at Michigan next week.
Thank you.
As we go from second place, we go to whoopsie daisy, pushed the wrong button there. As we're going to be going from ourselves from second place to victory lane, where we're going to be having that of Christopher Wade with us. Chris, it's Sam and Zach up in the booth. Congratulations on finding yourself at a victory lane. But man, how was it trying to go through tonight with how much pressure was on to try to help your teammate out?
I wanted to. I was end up being short on fuel, and I was going to actually swap with him, but he's like, "Don't worry about it, man. Just go do your thing." And so I was trying to help him out, and then I got separated at the end. I was trying to pull him back to me so he at least get second, but yeah, it was a struggle for sure. It's not had to do with some aggressive aggressive blocking, and need to apologize to Medlin. I went through. He had a huge run, and I yanked the wheel down. And by the time he was coming back, I yanked it back to the right or whatever a little bit, and he was there. He was already touching me when I was trying to correct it back. But yeah, it was a nice recovery for him to save it like that, and just wanted to apologize to him about that.
Well, Christopher, I tell you, man, you guys always on these plate races tracks always seem to work so well together, you and Ken Campbell there. But like you said, you got separated and had to save that fuel. How actually close were you on fuel? Because like you said, you had the lead there for pretty much that whole entire run.
During the race, I was like 2 laps short. I was trying to save, and I was like, "Come on, Ken, push me to this pack so I can save behind them," you know. And I wanted to be away from the other pack that was on the lead lap that was coming, and I wanted to keep that gap. And then but got behind that the lap traffic right there, and was trying to save all I could, and we remained in a distance from them. And I wanted to pull out, you know, and go by them once they was like 2 seconds behind me. But by the time they was already there, and I was like, "Oh man," and just had to go and do my thing, and had to do some aggressive blocking there and all that good stuff.
Well, that blocking certainly got you there to the end. Chris, congratulations on this win. How are you mentally trying to prepare, though, heading to Michigan next week?
I seem to do all right there. Sometimes the outside can work on the turns 1 and 2, I think. But we'll see how it goes, and I might can pull off again. I'm a fan of the outside, as you can see when it works, and I love doing that. And Randy, he kind of pulled off and abandoned me. I was like, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and do this by myself and take the lead, and that's what I done. And also when I actually ran out of fuel to celebrate, so that's how close I was.
Well, you had enough to get there at the end. Congratulations on that. And before we let you go, the floor is yours for any shout outs.
I want to thank my mom and dad, you guys for broadcasting, and Nate and all those guys for putting on the league, and all the admins, Derek and all those guys, and AC2 man, 2 skins, he's the man, and Chelsea, my girlfriend, for watching me go win this race.
Well, that is going to be the 53 of Christopher Wade. Congratulations on the win there, Chris, and have a good one heading to Michigan next week.
Thank you, guys.
As that is going to be your winner here tonight. We're going to be taking a look at our unofficial results of tonight's race, as it was a wild one here at Atlanta, sponsored by the Sharp Apparel here this evening. This is the cutoff race. See who's going to make the final 4, and we had plenty of different solutions of how we were going to calculate how this race was going to go down, but it all mattered on who had 0 incident points, on who was going to be moving in or out of racing for a championship. As take a look here again at our unofficial results. It's Christopher Wade, Scott Rickard, Andrew Hess going to be your top 3. Thank you for all 3 drivers joining us up in the booth for an interview, as well as Andrew Medlin coming away 4th, Ken Campbell 5th, Jason Gratton going to be in 6th position, Thomas Ogle 7th, Kyle Bowling's going to be 8th, Joshua Robinson 9th, and Ross Tatum going to get 10th place. And Zach, as we look at the rest of the field, plenty of woes, but I think the driver that's probably feeling it the most has to be for that of Randy Cornwell, who was one of our favorites in the first 20 laps with how aggressive he was.
Yeah, that he was, man. He's going to end up 17th to 1 lap down, so that's got to be kind of heartbreaking for him after really having a good performance there. And even Aaron Hill, he was right up in the mix of things there, involved in that incident with Kyle Bowling and him in the 4 machine there coming down to the end. He's going to end up 15th, so tough night for a few guys. Even Will Bustler, he was up in the mix there. He's going to finish 23rd a lap down, so yeah, tough break for a few guys there as through those pit cycles just not going their way. But I tell you what, man, those 0 incident points, those are going to come back to really help these guys that move on. And Ross Tatum and Joshua Robinson, they got to leave tonight with moving themselves onto that Final 4. They got to be so just worn out after this race, because they were so far back for the whole thing that they really had to fight tooth and nail just to get into this next round.
Yeah, they really had to fight as hard as they could, but it was a tough one as we have been given who's in the championship for. Again, we threw out the 3 drivers that got those incident points, who did not get incident points, but got the bonus point because they didn't get any. That being Josh Robinson, Ross Tatum, Ken Campbell. Because of where they finished, began with those bonus points, they were good to move on to our Final Four. It was all about who was getting that final spot, and it is one of our fan favorites that gets it done. Because of that, of seeing Brandon Pierce missing out on tonight's race, which we got an update in the middle of the race, it was because he had a work function, wasn't able to show up for tonight's race. Jason Grattan in the 91, he was given a second berth in the playoffs with Kyle McCoy stepping away. Coming into this round, well, he utilized that second chance. The 91 will be challenging and battling for a championship next week at Michigan. I mean, Zach, that's how you take a second chance fully to its most potential.
That you do, man. You got to congrats that guy for just fighting tooth and nail just to get into this round. Now going to be one of the Final Four contenders. That is great to see. And I tell you what, I think of those, 4 guys, he's definitely the dark horse there. I think he's going to be one that these guys don't need to sleep on. He is going to be a contender all the way down to the end of that thing, because I tell you what, when you make a Final Four like that, we see every single time. Those are usually the 4 drivers that perform the best because they prepare the most. So I think the preparation is going to be on the next level for these guys. And I tell you what, the Final Four is really setting up to be a great group, and whoever ends up winning that championship is going to be a deserving champion because it's going to be a first-time one at that.
Yeah, it's all 4 are going to be potential first-time championship winners, as that of Scott Rickard as well as Kyle McCoy no longer in the running for a championship this season. So it was wide open. Could it be a rookie, Ross Tatum, Josh Robinson coming in, second-year runner Jason Grattan, or could it be the veteran of Ken Campbell getting it done? Well, all those storylines will be set up heading into Michigan next week. But for us here at Freaky Fast Broadcasting, we got more playoff racing action. Stars and Stripes started off the playoff month for us here in October. Well, it's about to come to a close, but we got plenty of other series that are in the middle of their playoffs. Starting on Saturday, the WSSR. You loved how Atlanta raced here tonight. Well, we get more of that Atlanta racing in the Gen 7 machine as drivers going to be starting off their round of 8. Get excited to see how that's going to be going for themselves heading into that of Saturday night. Then on Monday, it's going to be seeing drivers going to have the week off for ISRC. They'll be back in November as that's going to be Halloween. But Tuesday, the Full Send Racing Series, they've got their playoffs racing. They're coming closer and closer to their playoffs, for themselves on Tuesday. Then start of a new round on Wednesday night is for that of the Wicked Racing League. And then we're right back here next Thursday. Zach, we get to crown a champion. It's been a long season, but it's almost coming to an end.
That it is, Sam. This is my favorite time of the year, man. I love crowning champions, and we're going to get to crown a new one at that, like we brought up before. And 4 guys that really are deserving. And to tell you what, Michigan also, that's going to be a track where you're going to have to really stay on top of your game because it's hard to get away from the competition there. It's a track that the draft matters. You stay very packed up. So it's going to be a nail biter all the way down to the end of that thing. You're going to need some good help from your teammates also. And oh man, I tell you, I just can't wait to close it out and crown a champion because it's always a special moment to hear the emotion from that driver. And it's going to be a battle all the way down to the end, just like it's been all season long.
Been a fantastic season for us to be giving you all the coverage for the Stars and Stripes series. This is season number 5. Each season, a brand new car. And for this season 5, a brand new champion gets to be crowned next week. Michigan is our final destination for 4 drivers to find out who's going to be getting their championship hopes made. Well, we cannot wait to give you all the coverage again here on Freaky Fast Broadcasting. But for tonight, for myself, Sam Dyer, for Zach Hall, for Robert Moyer Jr., and everyone else that helps out here at Freaky Fast Broadcasting, thank you for joining us on Incredible Atlanta Racing. We hope to see you next week. And if we don't, we hope to see you on our next broadcast. It's Saturday, WSSR. They go to Atlanta as well. We'll see you then. And have a good night.